Hi class. So I wanted to record a video here right near the end of our quarter to give you a little bit of extra help if you're having trouble with your thesis statement for your summary analysis essay. Thesis statements are important. Every essay needs one. You're going to hear me say that over and over again, especially if you take me for any future English classes. So this essay needs one, but this essay's thesis statement is a little weird. So I wanted to put this video together to hopefully help make this extremely clear and hopefully help you out. So let's look at some examples. So first off, what makes a thesis statement for a summary analysis complete is if it has these three things. It needs to name the author and or article, right? One or the other needs to be mentioned. Needs to sum up what you think the article is arguing and sum up your response to it, listing a few, if not all, of your main points of analysis. So let's look at some examples of thesis statements to see what I mean. So here's one. Katarina Johnson ultimately comes to the proposal. Oh, I'm kind of getting in the way there. There we go. Katarina Johnson ultimately comes to the proposal that, quote, the effect of the gut microbiome on behavior is likely a result of natural selection on microbes to grow and compete in the gut, and natural selection on hosts to depend on their microbes. So, right off the bat, there's definitely the author, right, is listed. Anyway, let's keep reading. It says the article is correct with extensive use of logos and ethos to support the author's argument, avoids fallacies to support the conclusion that there is an indirect connection to the gut, bacteria, and behavior, but fails to convey the message in a full spectrum audience manner. So you might not understand what all of those little parts mean. That's okay, right? A thesis statement is like a roadmap. When you look at a roadmap, it doesn't tell you all the parts inside the cities that you're going to. It just tells you how to get to the city, right? Once you get to the actual city, then you need a city map. And that's what you can kind of picture each paragraph being. Maybe this helps for you. I don't know. Helps me. So in this, looking at this thesis statement, let's look at what it does correctly. So right off the bat, there is this first sentence names the author and cites the author because it has a quote. So that's perfect. Right off the bat, this first half of this thesis statement, and is that even part of the thesis statement? That can be blurry, right? You can argue. Thesis statements aren't, they're concrete, but sometimes, because writing is art, they can be a little blurry around the edges. So I count this first sentence as part of the thesis statement. I would on your essay for you. So here we go. Katarina Johnson ultimately comes to, and here's the quote. So now we know Katarina Johnson, we don't know the name of the article, but that's okay. If you use this type of thesis statement, then before this thesis statement, you want to mention the article by name. So if you haven't yet, then it's very important to say in your intro what the article is and who wrote it before you get to that thesis statement. And then when you get to the thesis statement, you name one or the other just to kind of keep it going, right? I'm really trying to keep you from making the mistake that I see often where students work for weeks on this essay, and so they don't notice the fact that they leave out the article name and or the author in the intro, and that's bad. You want to list both. So in your thesis, list at least one, and I'll count that correct because that's a lot of help. So going back to what makes this right. So we have that first sentence, right? Secondly, what happens next? We come to the second part of this, and there are three things named. The article is correct with extensive use of logos and ethos. So these, as I read them, and like I say, most, by the way, it says correct. I bolded that because it's telling you the author's final judgment. So this is going to be one of the points of analysis in this essay. The article is correct with extensive use of logos and ethos to support the author's argument. If this is a well-done thesis statement, that should be the first section after the summary. So the summary, and then it should be this. What should happen next after that would be this, discussing how it avoids fallacies to support the conclusion that there is an indirect connection to gut bacteria and behavior. Notice, by the way, and I want to use this as an example because it says avoids fallacies. So I have encouraged you guys to talk about the logic and the fallacies you see in your article. But not all articles have logical fallacies. So if you find an article and you don't see any problems with the logic in it, that in itself is something you can discuss in your essay, and you should discuss it. You should bring it up and mention it. This article is really solid, and it's, as far as the logic goes, that doesn't have to mean that the whole article is correct, because an article can be very logical but still be wrong. So let's go back to the thesis. And this author does say that. Like, notice their third point, it goes negative, but fails to convey the message in a full spectrum audience manner. Do you know what full spectrum audience manner means? Of course you don't. You have no idea. But that's, again, not the point. The point is, in the thesis, you've read this, you know exactly where this essay is going. This essay is about this. This is what the author thinks is the main point of that the writer of the original article has made, and then I know that this essay is going to discuss these three things. These three are probably sections, so I'd imagine there being a heading and several paragraphs in each one. This essay might have more than 3 points also, and that's also okay. In the thesis statement, you want to put your main points, whatever you consider those to be, right? So if you wrote your essay and you maybe have 1 point of analysis that you really get into, but then you branch out from there into other points, then maybe your thesis only names one thing. But probably your essay, if it's done correctly, will have a section on the article, a section on the author, and a section on the intended audience. Those are places that you can, if any of those sections are big, if you dig into them a lot, those are great places to discuss this, to bring up and put in your thesis as far as the headings go, right? You can even put the exact same, let me make myself bigger so I can say this. If you haven't written your thesis statement yet and you get to the end of your essay and you're like, okay, now I want to go back and retroactively write my thesis, that's totally fine. One easy way to do that is to look at what headings you used and link them all together into a thesis statement. It's a way to do it. Just remember that you need to include in your thesis what your judgment is. You don't want to keep it a mystery. When we read articles online, like magazines, there's all kinds of mystery, right? You start off and you're not sure where this person's going to go, and maybe they string you along because it keeps you reading. In an academic essay, we do not do that. In an academic essay, you say what you mean, and then you say what you're gonna mean and say, and then you say what you mean, and then you say what you meant. So academic essays are that way. They're not. I want you to make yours beautiful, but your thesis statement needs to be overt and blunt. It needs to say what you think about the article. When I end your introduction paragraph, I should have a general idea of what is coming in the essay, right? Let's look at some more examples of good thesis statements. So let's look at this one. In the article, Bradley Blakeman's Trump border wall is vital, Dems should stop fighting it, the author claims that erecting a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border isn't as essential for fighting illegal immigration as locking your door is to protecting your family and valuable possessions. Blakeman's arguments supporting the border wall fall flat by using persuasive techniques that appeal to passive readers, providing a partial perspective on historical events, and using observational selection to bolster the claim. Complex things, again, don't really know exactly what those mean, but I do get the idea that this writer has some problems with this article. So let's break it down. So initially, we do know the name of the article. He lists the article's name. Do we know the author's name? No, he just says the author, and that's totally okay. And he cites it because it is it's a paraphrase. Well, my brain fell out. It's a paraphrase, right? So that's good. So the first part, this is similar to the last one, right? Where there's 2 sentences, and the first sentence establishes the article and the article's perspective, and the second sentence establishes your, or the writer's thesis and what their argument is going to be. So let's keep looking at that. So then, through the 3 things we see 3 right away, and I'll color them, right? Those 3. So the blue one first, Blakeman's arguments supporting the border wall fall flat by using persuasive techniques that appeal to passive readers. So we know he thinks that these techniques failed, and that's important. We want to know that. Providing a partial perspective of historical events, that's a critique as well, partial perspective. And then finally, by using observational selection to bolster the claim. Observational selection. I'm not even sure what that is. It doesn't sound positive, but we'll find out when we get to that part in the essay. For the thesis, you just need to know where we're going, right? Just the name of the city on the map that we're heading to. So hopefully that makes sense. This is a good thesis. So, right? Here's a third one. So in this one, I don't have it broken down and color-coded because I want you to be thinking about it. Look at this thesis statement. Do you see, just watching this video, do you see the name of the article or author listed? Yes! Right? Yes, you do, right in the beginning. Here's the name of the article, here's the author. So then, cool, perfect. So then, can I even highlight this in here? Yep, oh, nice. So there we go. We have name of article and author, deal. So what's the second thing we need, right? First thing was make sure we name the article and or author. Second, what we think that article is saying, what the core argument of that article might be. So in this thesis, it says, states that in light of a growing belief across many countries, Harari explains why, by the way, this grammar is not so good, but the thesis statement's pretty good. States that in light of a growing belief across many countries, Harari explains why a single group of people do not secretly control the entire world. So, summing it up, this author is explaining that even though many people believe that there is such a thing as a secret society running the world, they don't think it's true. So now we know what the article is talking about. Then the last thing we need, so we need what the point of the article, we need the author and or article, we need the point of the article, and then we need your general, or this writer's general feelings about it, and broken into any primary aspects they want to discuss, right? What points of analysis are they discussing? So here we go. After careful examination of the information provided, the author relies, so this sentence here, by the way, it's not necessary. I would suggest cutting it, because I would suggest cutting anything that's not there, but it's also not bad. So you could always use that. If you're not sure how to lead into something, things like this work. After careful examination of the information provided, the author relies on the appeals of ethos and logos to examine and disprove a conspiracy theory, explain why people are attracted to them, and identify real conspiracies. So I see three things here, right? The author relies on the appeals of ethos and logos to examine and disprove a conspiracy theory. Explain. So there's three things. So that's good, right? It's not good in that I don't know what this writer thinks about this stuff. After careful examination of the information provided, the author, you're describing it. This is a summary, really. What that part is more summary than analysis. I want to know what this writer, the writer who wrote this essay, thinks about those things. So instead of saying the author relies on the appeals of ethos and logos, I should hear whether that was done well or poorly. Using ethos and logos and pathos by themselves is not inherently good or bad. I need to know whether or not this article used them well, whether or not you think, as the person writing this essay, whether or not you think it could have been done better, whether or not you think it was manipulative, whether or not you think any of them kind of went towards fallacy instead of being real, motivation, right? Like, we've talked about how ethos can become an argument based on authority if it's not done well, if it's done to manipulate, right? Pathos can become an emotional appeal to emotion, if it's not done well. So what do you think? So I should know. I should have a couple of words here mentioning the author relies well on the appeals of ethos and logos, or the author relies too much or in a bad way, or the author manipulates the audience. Something. I need something there to tell me, right? So that's why this thesis statement is really good, but isn't complete. It needs that one last piece. So again, let's look at what thesis statements need. These three things. For your summary analysis essay specifically, thesis statement needs these things. Name the author and or article, sums up what you think the article is arguing, and sums up your response to it, listing a few of your main points of analysis, and making sure that you say somewhere in there your overall judgment. And your judgment can be mixed. Maybe you say, let me make myself bigger here. Maybe you say like this one, because in my, the framework that I gave you that you can follow for this essay, discussing the text, discussing the author, and then discussing the intended audience, those three things, you don't have to follow that pattern. That if you do follow that pattern, you should cover everything. But you might want to, in your essay, talk about something different. Maybe the article you have has three really clear points of analysis that you want to talk about that aren't those three things, but that in talking about them, you will bring up those three things. That's a way to do it. Again, like I've said over and over again, writing is art. So if you want to try something, go ahead, right? I'll help you. I'll tell you whether you did it right or wrong, and I'll always give you feedback for how to make it better, especially next week when we have peer review. So you will get help then. But I want you to work now, this week, on getting your draft done as possible. It's due Sunday. So I want to make sure that it is complete and that you include a thesis statement in it. Please make sure you include a thesis statement and have it be as correct as you can. Because if you have a good thesis statement, when you go into peer editing and you get told, that's great, you don't have to worry about it. You can actually focus on the most important part of the essay, which is what your essay says, what you're actually arguing. The thesis statement is a very important piece, and when it's gone, it messes up the whole essay because the reader doesn't know where it's going. So it's very important, but it's not the most important. It's important because without it, things fall apart. But once it's there, then the reader can focus on what's really important, which is what you have to say. And that's what I want to see. So do your best work. Always let me know if you have any questions. And next week, after you've done your best work, when you have your essay up online for us to do peer editing, I'm going to be giving you some feedback too. So that'll be helpful. But in the meantime, if you have any questions about this, how to write a thesis statement for this, or anything else, please let me know. See you guys later.